Training camp has begun. The NFL Hall of Fame game is this upcoming Thursday. And if you ask me, now is the best time to start betting on some NFL futures. But welcome on into GoldSheet TV. I'm your co-host, Eric Pauly, with my co-host, Dan Alexander at Newbie Talks on Twitter. And today we're going to be going over the MVP market, the Offensive Player of the Year market, and the Defensive Player of the Year market. Next show, we'll go over Coach of the Year, Defensive Rookie of the Year, and Offensive Rookie of the Year. But right now, focusing in on the three major award markets in the NFL. And we're going to get right into it. But before, I want to remind everybody that liking this video and subscribing to the channel is the best way to help us grow. Also, all GoldSheet customers, all three products are now one product on GoldSheet.com. Early bird pricing is still available on GoldSheet.com, but Confidential, Extra, and GoldSheet are now all one product. And all LTS picks that were on GoldSheet.com, same exact service, same exact product, now on WagerTalk.com. But Dan, let's get right into it. So the MVP award, obviously we have Patrick Mahomes, the reigning MVP. I'm going to go down and read about the first couple of favorites here. So you got Mahomes plus 700. And now make sure you shop around because this is from DraftKings. These odds are obviously very dynamic. Could change from book to book, as Dan and I just noticed some big discrepancies of some bets on different books that we'll get to shortly. But going through the MVP, Mahomes plus 700, Joe Burrow plus 750, Josh Allen plus 800, Jalen Hurts plus 1,100, Justin Herbert plus 1,300, Lamar Jackson and Trevor Lawrence plus 1,500, Aaron Rodgers plus 1,600, and then you start getting into more of the plus 200, the 20 to ones and further on down. Obviously, still have a shot to win, but a long shot nonetheless. But Newbie, we've been talking before the show. We were going over some of our notes and looking at the board now, right? We know the MVP award is a quarterback award at this point. This got to be Patrick Mahomes' award to lose, even though he won last year and there might be some voter fatigue. But it's Mahomes' league. It's Mahomes' award, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's the rightful favorite, but the big question is, does he go back to back? I feel like this happens all the time when you're looking at the Coach of the Year market. Is after the secret is out about you, and let's not kid ourselves, the secret's been out on Pat Mahomes for quite some time. And if it weren't for maybe some injuries last year to a guy like Jalen Hurts, maybe you have a little bit tighter of a race for the MVP last season. I do want to say we have really the greatest graphics department in all of sports media, but it did crack me up to see Dak Prescott sitting in the middle of the MVP award. If you want a dark horse, there you go. That's the guy sitting right there in the middle. But the thing with me with MVP betting, Eric, is I feel like I get burned in this market all the time. Maybe it's because I don't build up a big enough portfolio, but I also feel like it's so subjective. And they also have players now listed in the field that really have no chance at winning it because this has become a quarterback award. I was joking with you off air about, is this finally the year that a quarterback doesn't win? And I just go back to even the year when Derrick Henry was the one who ended up winning the Offensive Player of the Year. And I thought if you just look at what he brought to the team, he truly was what the MVP means. You know what I mean? When the talking heads are on shows and they're debating, they're talking about, well, the MVP is the most valuable player to their team. And it's just not the reality of how this award really across all sports ends up being bet. It ends up being a regular season award. It ends up being a stat padding award. So it's something that I don't typically bet, but I know these future markets and these player of the year markets, the MVP, it's something that you've always dabbled in. And I feel like you're one of those bettors who does like building up a portfolio. So I feel like if you're building up a portfolio, you have to get the longest odds that you can on Pat Mahomes to have a strong portfolio. I think is that a correct assumption on my end?
Yeah, 100%. Definitely looking to bet Patrick Mahomes at any price. I'll take a look and see where a better price is available, maybe than DraftKings. But the point you made about the MVP award being a QB award versus the Offensive Player of the Year, even when, like you said, Derrick Henry could have technically been labeled the most valuable player on his team.
Yeah.
Could have even probably made the argument for Justin Jefferson last year. He obviously took home the Offensive Player of the Year award. Just looking at the odds, you don't even have a quarterback until you have Justin Fields and Lamar Jackson at 20 to 1 and 25 to 1 for Offensive Player of the Year. And that's kind of like those guys who are, have that rushing capability as well. You have Joe Burrow also at 25 to 1 because they're basically saying like, maybe if their season isn't good enough to win an MVP award, that at least they'll maybe be in the running for the Offensive Player of the Year award. But that doesn't even crack the top 5. So that doesn't, you have to, at this point, if you're not narrowing down and focusing solely on quarterbacks, like the market is literally screaming in your face to do, it's just a donation at this point to bet another position. Going into more of a portfolio building situation right now, I have some guys that I like and some guys to avoid. Patrick Mahomes,
Okay.
whatever price you can get him at, that's the best price you can find. Of course, is worthwhile to have in your portfolio. I'm a big Rodgers guy this season. I know that that's not a hot take. That's not a spicy take. It's probably a pretty square take in reality. All things considered, what I find to be very intriguing about Aaron Rodgers is how he's bought into what he's doing. You don't take a massive pay cut to come and play football for the New York Jets if you did not want to be with the New York Jets. You don't bring Alan Lazard, Randall Cobb, Nathaniel Hackett, and get all the boys back together for one more ride if you did not want to be stationed at the Meadowlands with the New York Jets. You don't go to Knicks games with Sauce Gardner to hang out with someone who's almost half his age if you're not interested in building camaraderie and moving forward, and also throwing with guys like Garrett Wilson and some of the other receivers as well. Yeah, I know, like I mentioned, Newbie, that this is probably square. Are you on the wave with me where this could be another Rodgers vintage year because he wants to be here and it's hard to, write off one of the best players in the sport's history? Or, did Father Time catch up and this Jets offensive line is going to get him running to the ground? And we might see Brett Favre 2.0 where he starts off amazing, then the injuries hit, and then the season just over just like that.
Well, if I had a crystal ball, then I wouldn't get burnt in these MVP markets like I do every single year. But, I think you definitely see that Rodgers, again, I think you absolutely nailed it. He's not just going to be hopping in the deep end if he didn't think that this team could win. They have some talent around him. So sure, I don't know if I'm quite as on the hype train just because of what we saw last year. And how much of that was the fractured relationship between Rodgers and Green Bay and Matt LaFleur. Like maybe some new scenery will do him well, but he's going to a team that historically has really struggled. He doesn't really have an offensive-minded coach, so maybe that's going to play into him being more of a field general, and there won't be that friction that he had with LaFleur. But also, when you're looking at MVP markets from more of a macro view, you need a narrative, right? You need something that adds a little buzz to it. And that's just how this market is. And what's more of a buzz than Aaron Rodgers struggling last year, jumping to a team who's historically struggled. Really, the only reason that they couldn't take that next step last year was they couldn't find a steady hand at quarterback. So the narrative is certainly there for a Aaron Rodgers MVP ticket to go home. I still think he has something left in the tank, but until you see it and until it's done on the field, it's hard for me to, completely jump into the bandwagon. But again, they rip off 3 wins out of the gate or anything like this, you're not going to get a better number. So if you can make a case for a player in an MVP market, you make the play now. I think that's just the reality of it. I think when you look at what happened with Joe Burrow the other day, and thankfully he's walking around with the sleeve, there's no limp. But if you didn't see it, there was this video where he was rolling out to his side. He pulls up. It was on the same leg that he tore his ACL on. So that's a scary moment right there, which is something that always worries me about betting these futures markets early, is you're always an injury away from having a dead ticket. However, the other side of that coin is a lot of the time you're not going to find a better number on some of these players. And I think in the case of Aaron Rodgers, that's certainly what you're going to be seeing here.
100%. And also, if you build a portfolio, like we spoke about many times on this show, you're not crying over one dead ticket if you're getting a fantastic price on that player. Obviously, Mahomes wouldn't be the best example because just 7-1, it's not really a game-changing price there. But if it was someone deeper down the board where you had higher odds, you lose a 40-1, but you still have another 40-1 alive that actually benefits and goes from 40-1 to 20-1 because of that injury to the other player, you're still sitting pretty.
Well, and if you have, and Eric, if you have like some new bettors who are hopping in who maybe have, some of the bonus bets, or when you sign up for a book and you have free play money, those are the times that you want to build up your portfolio. Because let's say, you put your actual money on the team or the player that you think is going to win the award, and you have X amount, let's say it's $100 in free bets. You can slice up that pie of free bets to either guarantee yourself a profit on the top 5 options, or you can, slice it out even further and try and at least break even on your top 5 options. And then the only money that you're expending is the money you actually deposited. So if people are, new to sports betting, I always suggest taking advantage of those free plays and those props. And when you have those free plays, don't waste them on a minus 110 bet. Use those free plays on something that's a really nice long ticket. That's a lot less risk associated with it when you're using it as a free play.
And that's another great point too, because throughout the season you're going to get bonuses. So my digression aside, throughout MLB season, get a ton of bonuses from sports books. There's nothing I don't, if I like that day, I could use that on a future market. So a couple of weeks ago, I got a pretty big 50% bonus used on the Astros to win the AL West when they were like 6 games behind the Rangers. Now they're only 2 games behind. I already have a positive cash out from a bonus bet. So something great to consider right there. I really appreciate that newbie. But some guys to kind of avoid in this market. We saw the picture that our producer Robo put up, but we got Dak Prescott and Josh Allen hanging out there. I'm bullish on one, bearish on one, you're bearish on the other. Talk to me, newbie. What don't you like about Dak Prescott this year?
I don't know if it's Dak Prescott specifically or if it's just the Cowboys situation with Mike McCarthy. I mean, when we did the NFC's preview, I think half of our time was spent talking about the frustration around McCarthy. And here's the thing with Dak Prescott is this season could go one of 2 ways. Is he could, come back. He could be looking like the player that he did in 2016 when him and Zeke were lighting the world on fire. That could happen. But the other side of the coin, with what we've seen thus far from Dak Prescott, they're going to give him as much rope as he needs, and there's a potential that he ends up hanging himself with that rope as a somewhat of an analogy, because they saw what they needed out of Cooper Rush last year. You know what I mean? Is no matter what, there is no way, unless injury happens again, that they're going to be making a quarterback change when you look at this roster. And with Zeke, departing, this is going to be an offense that is going to continue to air out the ball. And for Dak Prescott, what we saw last year, I'm not certain if that's a really great thing to take the training wheels off, so to speak, and allow him to air it out, because despite only playing despite only playing in 12 games last year, he had 15 interceptions. And we are going to do a season-long prop video, but one that I definitely just want to get into and why I'm a little bit more bearish, so to speak, on Dak Prescott is I'm going to be having a ticket on him to throw the most interceptions in the NFL at 10-1. He averaged an interception on 3.8% of his throws last season, and that was worst in the league around names like Davis Mills and Carson Wentz. Out of 33 different quarterbacks, that was the worst rate in the league. So again, we'll dive into a little bit more, but I think that the more likelihood is that this Dallas Cowboys team can even win because of the defense that they have if he's turning over the ball. So I think you could see a reality where he's throwing 2 interceptions, 3 interceptions, and they're not making the change to Cooper Rush. And if he plays a full entire season, this team can still win with him struggling a little bit. So I think he's going to be on the field a lot. And if he's on the field a lot, you might be seeing a lot of interceptions. So that's why I'm not getting him in any of my MVP portfolios personally.
No, it's interesting because I'm on the other side of the coin there. Like we mentioned during our NFC's preview, some statistics from Pro Football Focus. He only had his 4% turnover worthy play rate was actually better than 11 other starting QBs in the NFL, despite having his career high interceptions, his second lowest yards per attempt of his career, and also his highest interception percentage and bad throw percentage. But again, it seems as if a lot of those throws that, some quarterbacks do get lucky where these are interception-worthy throws, but they get dropped. They aren't completed by the defense to become interceptions. And now your season's looking like a much better season when if you turn on the tape, there are some plays that they got lucky. They should have had more interceptions, more turnovers, and it would have hurt their team. Just for me, considering that the fact that the NFC is wide open, obviously you have the Eagles and Niners, and then you have the Cowboys in terms of the odds are the third favorite to come out of the NFC, that while this defense is definitely a very good unit, I love Dan Quinn, I am a little bit bearish on Schottenheimer and what Coach McCarthy is doing in Dallas. But adding Brandon Cooks, I think, was a huge signing, even though he has struggled staying healthy. That is a vertical threat on the field. He's produced in every situation he's been in, though he's getting a little bit older. And CeeDee Lamb has emerged to be a true, legitimate, borderline number 1 wide receiver. So just playing some devil's advocate, I could see the turnover last season being an anomaly and the regression coming in a positive way for Dak in terms of throwing interceptions, which would also, of course, lead to ideally more success for the Dallas Cowboys. But we're running long on MVP, but I've been loving the conversation. Last play I want to get to very briefly. I'm bearish on Josh Allen. I'll tell you why. More so bearish on Josh Allen at plus 800 to be the MVP for a couple of reasons. For starters, he might even be the best quarterback in his division anymore. As I've made it clear, am in on Rodgers. I know, again, it's very public to be in on Rodgers, and sometimes the public is going to be right. We'll see what ends up happening. So if Allen isn't the best quarterback in his division, it doesn't lead the team to a division title as they've been winning over the past number of years, that automatically is going to be a knock on his resume. This is the most difficult division title he's going to have to win in recent memory. So that's going against him. And number two, the Bills focus so much more on strengthening their run game than their pass game. And I think a lot of that has to do with while we saw Allen progress in terms of completion percentage 2 years ago, he was completing 69% of his passes, then dropping back down to that 63% number. I'm not going to go out and say that they don't trust him because adding Dalton Kincaid was a great option to have, but he's also a great run blocker. You go focusing on James Cook and Damian Harris and Tavius Murray, and you keep this receiver core being only Stephon Diggs. Gabe Davis is a decent player. Khalil Shakir is whoever. Deontay Hardy, Trent Sherfield. You're not doing Allen many favors. So I'm kind of viewing this as I'm not saying there's obviously his rushing ability adds into it. His stats he can score touchdowns on the ground as well are going to be huge, but I don't see this as, let Josh Allen cook and let the man loose and, have him throwing the ball over the field. I think they're going to want to focus on establishing the run more, as they should, because that'll open up more of the pass game. But Newbie, am I crazy to be low on a guy who is just generally beloved across the NFL?
Well, also with Josh Allen, even when he's good, he's that gunslinger, and that's what makes him good. How many turnover-worthy plays did he have? Even think about the first game of the season where it was turnover, and they would still be in game. So I don't know, maybe this is a guy to look at the most interceptions of the year. He's also sitting at 10-1 because I think you nailed a lot of it. There's one thing about Josh Allen's game that has been the constant throughout his career, and it's also, for what it's worth, what makes him the absolute buck that he is, and it's his recklessness. The way that he runs with the ball, the way that he carries the ball, the way that he tries to fit this ball into very tight windows. Like, he believes he can make every throw on the field. He believes he can make every player on the field miss, and that recklessness, will it catch up with him this season? Who knows? But again, this is a guy who maybe doesn't have the same narrative. If they finally do it, okay, great. But again, with it being a regular season award, I think he's already put on some of the best years that you're going to see out of Josh Allen, and he didn't win it in those seasons. So I'm with you.
You're completing 69% of your passes for 4,500 yards in 2020. I know that was a tough year to lose it, but that was probably his best shot. Considering from a statistical perspective, he's regressed the next two seasons. Just putting that out there and being real. But moving on to the Offensive Player of the Year award, you got chalk on top of Justin Jefferson. Jamar Chase is the chalk on top. Then you have Justin Jefferson, Christian McCaffrey, Nick Chubb, and Tyreek Hill rounding out the top five. Then I mentioned you got a couple quarterbacks there because this is probably going to go to a receiver or a tight end. But obviously, I see the love for Jamar Chase. But how is Jetta's Justin Jefferson not the favorite? This man is a record-breaking wide receiver heading into his fourth year. Talk to me, Newbie. What's there not to love about Justin Jefferson? I know he won it last year. Voter fatigue maybe being the biggest thing, but Jefferson, don't get me wrong, Chase is great, but Justin Jefferson is that dude.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Shop around. You can find a 14-1 on Justin Jefferson. The only thing I always worry about is back-to-back awards. That means something when they're just doling it out every single year. So already Justin Jefferson is going to be fighting an uphill battle with that because he won it last year, but over 1,800 yards last season, just a walking highlight reel. And you always have to look at a player's situation, right? And Kirk Cousins has proved he's more than capable at getting the ball to Justin Jefferson. And you also now don't have an Adam Thielen, but you've added some speedsters as well. So I think the players around Justin Jefferson have gotten better, which maybe drops his usage down a little bit, but you don't drop the usage down for a guy who Doesn't it seem like Justin Jefferson is the guy that everyone told us Odell Beckham Jr. was after the catch? Like Justin Jefferson makes things happen. He is truly a game-breaking wide receiver. The hands are incredible. The route running, you can't say enough about it. So if you're able to get him at a 14-1, I don't see why you don't place that. I really like that look. And again, with how wide receivers play, this it almost is starting to feel like the offensive player of the year is becoming a little bit of a wide receiver award. And running backs really have to have a hell of a year. But this is also a year where does the NFL really want a running back that they have clearly said we don't value you in the marketplace to win, because then it opens up a whole can of worms going back to the tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theories. But as far as the wide receivers go, Jamar Chase is great. He's also in a three-headed beast that's in that wide receiving core. He's clearly the best out of those three, but there's also a target share issue that I have with him as well, whereas Justin Jefferson, he is just that guy. Even when he's covered, even when he's double covered, some way he's open. So at 14-1, it makes me scratch my head. It makes me feel like a lot of that has to do with, does he win it back-to-back? I think he's talented enough to do so, but it's definitely an uphill battle.
The man finished fifth in MVP voting last season, considering what he is as a wide receiver, and now, of course, finished first in Offensive Player of the Year voting. Like, if there's a couple players I fanboy over, it's Patrick Mahomes and Justin Jefferson are two of them. I'm just watching them play football is honestly like a pleasure. Like, they're so good, and the fact that he's not even chalk makes me even more intrigued of getting in on 14-1, despite the issues with voter fatigue and having somebody win back-to-back. That is a serious thing. But going a little bit deeper down the board, still in the top five, but Nick Chubb now, like best running back in football the last couple of years. Him and Derrick Henry, like probably undebatable. You can tell me either one of those two. I'm not going to argue with you. I would say it was Chubb this whole time from a pure running perspective. Again, not going to argue with you there. Now in this situation, you have Cleveland, who has a great offensive line. They're probably going to want to throw the ball more with Deshaun Watson as he's now in the year more comfortable into this system. But do you see value in Chubb being the all-around just horse that he is at about 18-1 or 20-1, depending where you look? That might be worth the wager, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, the concern for me looking towards a running back is this whole saga that's happened in the offseason. It would be a lot of egg on the face if we're like, hey, running backs, you're not valuable enough to be paid, but you're the offensive player of the year. So does the red tape around that be enough to keep voters off him? I'm not sure, but at 20-1.
One of the only guys who got the last contracts, too. Chubb got that second contract.
True.
He was worth it. So he is one of those guys who beat the narrative because he's that good.
Yeah, and he does beat the narrative. I'm glad you said it like that, because also when you're looking at this Kareem Hunt situation, it's looking like he's not going to be re-signing in Cleveland. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but you're seeing Nick Chubb sitting at 20-1. And this is a guy who's gone over 1K just on the ground. Don't even factor in what he's able to do as a receiver as well. And I think that usage is going to rise now that Kareem Hunt, the receiving back, is gone. Other than his rookie year, he's gone over 1K on the ground. As I mentioned, no Kareem Hunt. And if you look at who's around him in this running back room, do we see them getting really excited to get him off the field, to see Jerome Ford, Demetric Felton Jr., John Kelly Jr. threatening his share of the running back load? And also, I expect him to be used in the passing game more. Deshaun Watson, what is he going to want to do? Check it down a little bit to his running back, have design plays for Nick Chubb. And it was a part of his game that when Deshaun Watson was playing, you already saw his target share increase. He likes checking it down to Nick Chubb because he gets to get all those yardage while he's just running people over. So, I think that this is a really, really nice number that you're seeing Nick Chubb. I think also for you fantasy players out here, he would be the number one running back that I'm targeting. I know that everyone's talking about Christian McCaffrey. You're talking about Austin Eckler. I think Chubb has the best situation. They have a strengthened offensive line. If the Cleveland Browns succeed this year, it's going to be because Nick Chubb is the top running back in the NFL at 20-1. That's a bet I feel like you got to make now. And while this isn't a market I typically bet, that's one that I'm adding in because I just think this is a great play. I'm really high on Nick Chubb, and he's a player who, as we head into the season, I'm going to be looking to get props over, anytime touchdown scorer. He's the kind of guy that I think think at least early in the year, before the secret is completely out, we're going to be able to get some money made on Nick Chubb, and why not hop in now and try and get one for a season long?
Yeah, you don't got to convince me. I'm all in on Nick Chubb. Absolutely love him. The fact that you mentioned in the receiving game, like in 2020, he did average 8.3 yards per target.
Yeah.
Only not acting like he got a ton of targets in that season in the receiving game, but he has shown that he can be effective. And Kareem Hunt will not be resigning with Cleveland from everything I'm reading in the tea leaves. So, do they have anybody back there to really take away snaps? And do you want this guy ever not on the field besides for the he's going to need one rest play here and there, but besides that, no, you want Nick Chubb on the field. He's your best player on offense, unless Deshaun Watson can reclaim that title. But two wide receivers that I'm looking at. One coincides very well with the Aaron Rodgers pick, which is, again, this is also probably a pretty square bet because I just see it all over Twitter. Garrett Wilson, wide receiver for the New York Jets, had 83 catches for 1,100 yards in his rookie year with literally the worst quarterback in the NFL. He had only a 56.5% catch rate. I mean, this guy was just getting thrown ducks left and right to him, and he still was able somehow to come down with 1,100 receiving yards. Also 56 first downs, which is very impressive. Like, he is the clear-cut number one for the Jets. So I would certainly take a look at Garrett Wilson of the Jets at 30-1. I'd probably better numbers. I'll take a look in a second for you. But that's something where my eye is on because he's shown talent-wise. He's ridiculous. And we've seen a lot of year 1 to 2 leaps. Obviously, you had like guys like Jefferson, Jamar Chase, who were amazing year 1, then doubled it up year 2, minus Chase's injuries. But even on his 12-game pace, he was ridiculous last season. Garrett Wilson has shown that he looks like he could be that guy. Going a little bit further down the board, though, Christian Watson in limited action last year, 14 games, only I think 12 of those were starts. A lot of injuries, only 611 yards, 7 touchdowns. Going from Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love in the unknown. But Newbie, do you think that Watson has the ability to take kind of like a ridiculous step this upcoming season? Or are you thinking about the Packers offense a little bit differently this year?
Yeah, I think, for what it's worth, what you saw from Watson, I don't think that was just a flash in the pan. I think that this guy legitimately has downfield threat ability. And again, he has a potential to become Love's favorite guy. So while, again, it's not like we have some crystal ball, I think that this is a guy who's going to be featured in this offense. And also, I know we got to get to Defensive Player of the Year, so I won't belabor the point, but I think all of these players offensively have a chance to shine a little bit more. Why is that? Because they actually have a really nice offensive-minded coach and a run-predicated coach that will open up the passing game in Matt LaFleur, who can finally run his offense. You don't have Senor Checkout in Aaron Rodgers completely changing it to a play where he's going to try and throw into double coverage and try and extend the play. Like, they are going to run Matt LaFleur's offense. That's why I really like him as a potential Coach of the Year candidate. And two players that I really think are going to benefit from this, Christian Watson being one of them, but I think the backfield definitely going to benefit. Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, when we get into our season-long props, two plays that I think you should bet now because you're already seeing a major discrepancy in the marketplace is Aaron Jones over 800.5 rushing yards. I grabbed that one at DraftKings, and A.J. Dillon over 675.5 rushing yards. That one I grabbed on FanDuel. I won't give the full breakdown, but these are just two players that I think you're going to see usage increase. What would be the best way to bring Jordan Love along? Have a strong backfield, have a strong running game. I think that's something they're not going to shy out of, and you're not going to see Aaron Rodgers checking out and doing the smoke motion that he always does, saying, hey, go downfield. They're going to allow these running backs to rush hard, and I'll break down the stats in a coming video here on GoldSheet TV. But Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon over their season-long rushing totals, two plays that I really like, and it also ties into Christian Watson, continuing what he did last year and maybe even ratcheting it up a bit.
Yeah, and if Aaron Jones gets the volume that he would potentially get, Aaron Jones is a hell of a running back. So even a sneaky pick and just saying screw the wide receivers and just focusing maybe on Aaron Jones to be in the race for the offensive player of the year award. But we'll be talking Coach of the Year next time. And I hate Matt LaFleur, so I'm very excited for Thursday to be getting a little bit in depth.
There'll be some sparks flying, yeah.
The pros and cons of Matt LaFleur, but DPOY saving the least amount of content for last. I have just one look. You're looking at potentially two guys. easy to see why. TJ Watt plus 850. The man was hurt for a majority of last season, but 2 years ago when he won the award with 20 plus sacks. Like, what more can you ask for this absolute animal? Tell me why you think TJ Watt's going to be coming back into form this season.
I mean, again, this is just a guy who the narrative surrounds as well. And plus 850, again, it's not like I absolutely love it, but in 2021, 22 and a half sacks, following up 15 the year prior. And then last season in a game where he missed 7 games, you look at what the Steelers did without him. 1 and 6 without him last year in the lineup. And some people might just think that's a flash in the pan. But if you look at him in his career, the Steelers are 1 and 10 when you don't have TJ Watt in the lineup. So I think where there's smoke, there's fire. And I don't think that that's just an anomaly. What he's able to do, even if the sacks don't show up, the pressure he's allowed to get, and also the on-field leadership that he brings, I'm not sure if that's something that really gets factored into Defensive Player of the Year. It's probably not, but it's funny. You can either burn $10 or you can place it on TJ Watt to win MVP and get a 20,000 plus 20,000 on that. So even a $10 bet wins you $2K. I mean, it's never going to get home, but if you talk about a guy who's clearly valuable to his team, it's TJ Watt. You just look at what they do with and without him. This is a guy who continues to be around the quarterback. And when you're around the quarterback, that's always a coin flip of if you're going to be getting that sack or not. So I know everybody's talking about Nick Bosa. I know everyone's talking about Micah Parsons. I know you're going to break down Myles Garrett. I think TJ Watt's mentioned in the same breath as all of those players. And if the Steelers defense takes a step forward, it's going to have a lot to do with TJ Watt being around the quarterback. So it's not a play that, I would be pulling off the rubber band on, but I think at plus 850, he deserves to be mentioned in the same class as some of those other players. And, at that kind of price, I think it could be at least worth a look, maybe a little bit of a sprinkle.
Yeah, because TJ Watt at this point is considered chalk. DraftKings got Micah Parsons plus 650, Myles Garrett plus 750, then TJ Watt plus 850. So definitely the market's definitely not sleeping on this guy. However, should he be, the favorite instead of the third favorite is definitely a question that will remain to be answered. Obviously, I see the reasonings for Micah Parsons being the favorite. Like, the guy's an animal. His versatility is ridiculous, but
unreal mode.
If I'm going for this award, obviously would look to build a portfolio, but I do see most value in the top of the board. And then obviously when you have Aaron Donald at 25-1, who could also be a trade candidate, which would be better for him. I think that warrants a consideration. And I don't really need to explain why. But why Myles Garrett is my favorite here is because, first of all, you have this guy who's ascended every single year since he's been in the NFL. Like, it's very rare for a number 1 pick to not only be like just a great player, but literally be probably a top 3 player at his position. You can argue he's 1, 2, or 3. I wouldn't argue against you. But now, and this is something I thought was the truth last year, but is more the 100% the truth this season. This is the best talent he's had around him on the defensive line. You have the Dalvin Tomlinson signing, which is huge for the Browns up the middle. You have the Zadarius Smith trade that they made, which is huge on the other end, because Jadeveon Clowney last season was just a name. Right, he was not really a great player. Just everyone remembers Jadeveon Clowney, but he did not produce last year. You have Okonkwo also as a backup defensive end, who I think is huge, and also Shelby Harris just had a visit with the Browns. And if he does sign to Cleveland, it's just another key piece. So you got to double team Myles Garrett on every single snap, just as you do Micah Parsons, Nick Bosa, TJ Watt. But the way that this man has gotten better every single season, and now he has for real help on that defensive line to take away some of the pressure from him and give him more opportunities, I think this could be a Myles Garrett nuclear season, and not like 16 sacks in back-to-back years is nuclear enough. I think he could maybe push that 20-sack number this season. But we got another player, last one, Hassan Reddick, your Birds, absolute amazing season last year. He is currently plus 2,500 to win, but that's also within the top 10, so it's not like he's being fully disrespected, but definitely not chalk by any means. Talk to me why you're loving Reddick again so much this season.
Well, who was he tied with last season in sacks? It was the guy you were just breaking down there in Myles Garrett, and they were only behind Nick Bosa, who had a stellar year last year. But you even look at him, and he's dropped back in the pack here a little bit. So, maybe Nick Bosa could be worth a look. But the thing is, is Hassan Reddick. It's a sheer value play for me because sitting at 25-1, sure, he's still at the top of the list, but he should be mentioned in the same breaths as these guys. And while I might not be placing him for defensive player of the year, I think there is a way to get down on him. And again, it's something we'll maybe get into more in our season-long prop preview, but he's sitting at even money for over 11.75 sacks. So, that obviously takes out any half sacks, things like that. So you need him to get 12 regardless. But sitting at even money, I mentioned he was tied for second in sacks last season. And this defensive front for the Eagles, it only got better, and they brought back key contributors on the inside like Fletcher Cox. They added Jalen Carter to the inside, and that should only open things up for these edge rushers. And that's Josh Sweat, that's Hassan Reddick, that's Brandon Graham. And mentioning those names, you say, well, his sacks will probably go down. I think this Eagles front four is going to still have another stellar season. I think they proved last year that even with the rotation that they run, they can still be a force to be reckoned with. They were just 2 sacks behind the 1985 Bears. They had 70 total sacks last season. So everybody's eating up front. I don't think much of that changes. And if you also look at some of the offensive lines that they play this year, they have some potential to have those games where they get around 7, 8 sacks. If that's a game where Hassan Reddick's able to get 2 of them, 2.5 of them, I'm really liking that over 11.75 sacks sitting at even money. And also, if he has one heck of a year, why not sprinkle a little bit at 1,800 plus 1,800 to get the most sacks in the NFL? I see Hassan Reddick having another strong year. I think my favorite bet out of those two is taking that over on his total sacks number. But I think if he has a continuation of what you had last year, and I don't think you've seen anything in the offseason that told you he won't, I think he could be around those names as far as defensive player of the year, as far as the most sacks in the NFL. I think Hassan Reddick has another big year incoming because he has a bit of a chip on his shoulder that he didn't even get a vote for defensive player of the year last season.
Yeah, we will see if that is going to be a Eagles homer pick or if that's got life. I actually going to believe that does have some life. From what you mentioned, I think it's really important when you do have players like that to help you unlock you. Like, you can't just be, in most cases, you're not going to win except
the guy. Yeah.
He had, has played with some good players around him to help. And obviously he is one of the best we've ever seen. But next on Thursday, upcoming on Thursday, we'll be discussing the defensive rookie of the year market, the offensive rookie of the year market, and the coach of the year market. So similar breakdowns, just to dive it in. As you've heard, there's no rookie talk today. Rookie talk will be saved for Thursday. Week after that, back to college football for a little bit. Dan will be with Matt Josephs discussing some college football. Then after that week, we'll be doing some season-long props, breaking down some preseason, and getting ready for week 1. So thank you to every single listener here. You can find Newbie on Twitter at Newbie Talks. You can find myself on Twitter at Slime Action, as well as GoldSheet.com and WagerTalk.com/the Gold Sheet. Again, liking this video and subscribing is the best way to help the channel grow. And we will see you guys next time with a breakdown of 3 more markets. Thank you for listening. Have a great rest of your day.